James asks if we're going to do any training courses on AWS. No, and it really for the same reason we don't do training classes on Azure or Google. We learned back when we were doing the Hadoop training classes that anything you do on a fast changing technology, you put all this work into building the training course and then it's evaporated within 6 months. You know, everything changes. So in a perfect world, if you're ever going to build your own training courses, what you should build them on is things that never change, like the English language or Latin, you know, things that are COBOL, for example. Great topic for training classes there.
Math rarely ever changes.
Yes, all the math.
Philosophy.
Yeah, and if you want an example of that, just because when I'm sick, I watch Pluralsight. I'm weird.
Oh, yeah.
So I was watching. You take a look at some of the AWS stuff on Pluralsight, and you have to look at the dates. You have to take a peek at when was this, and even for some of the Node stuff I watched yesterday. Okay, how old is this? 2 years? I think that's okay, right? Anything older than that may be out of date.
Yeah.
I mean, there's even an AWS course on SQL Server stuff up there on Pluralsight, and I remember I watched that, and some of the stuff was wrong already. It was just like, no, they support that. Like, do that. It's like maybe like 6 months or a year after the course came out. It's just like, where do you go back and like add some italics in? Like, nope, now supported.
Yeah. This weekend I gave my serverless in AWS and Azure talk. And this is the second time I've given it. The last time I gave it was last month, and already things were different, right? And I had to go in and I had to update it, saying that, hey, this isn't the only. I think the Node version had changed. They had upgraded from 4.31 to 6.1.
And things are wrong by the end of the talk, probably.
And it's like, okay, you know, yep. And someone had pointed it out. Oh yeah, they have.
Like, wait, there's been an update.
Just did that.
This just didn't.
Sorry.
It's going to be the same thing with SQL Server on Linux too. When you start looking at the past summit talks, I mean, in the past you've had to submit your talk in advance and then put your deck in for review. Those poor souls who are doing the Linux version, they're going to be changing right up until they go on stage. You know.
Well, just the poor souls that are doing the Linux version. Period. Right. I mean, that's.
Yeah, there we go. So now's probably a good time for us to segue into technical questions.
No.
Let's see what we got here. John says, after we upgraded from SQL Server 2014 to 2016 last month, we're seeing stats update get blocked while my indexes are being reorganized. Then my inserts are being blocked too. So he's running all kinds of problems with updating stats and rebuilding indexes. I'm going to zoom out to a bigger question and say, if you're seeing blocking due to index maintenance and statistics, what would you do differently?
Oh, you're asking me.
He wasn't asking me, that's for sure.
Well, I didn't know if I mean, you could have been asking the person who asked the question too.
Oh, no.
Rephrase that long Bible. So I would, I would want to know first if he's running them at the same time, or if there's some query running, which is like pooping its pants and saying, "Oh, I got to update stats now," and that's what the organized stats update conflict is. That would be my first question. Because if you're running them both at the same time, well, then that's not a good idea.
So yeah, index of stats at the same time. That's a bad idea to begin with. Don't change a table across multiple sessions. Bad idea. Gordon says, if I have a database in an AG and within a transaction, I'm moving data from it to an archive database that's not a member of the AG, holy cow. But will it cause a problem on an AG secondary if I roll back the transaction? So the second, you may want to sketch this out and ask it on Stack Exchange, because there's a few different things at play here. Like, I'm wondering why you're even asking about the secondary if you're talking about inserts that are over on the primary node.
Well, I'm guessing if it's an archive, there's an insert and then a delete, and then he might roll. Yeah. There might be a rollback of the delete.
And I would do the insert in a separate transaction, make sure everything worked perfectly. And then the delete should be just one statement. You shouldn't need to just delete from the primary wherever it's already in the archive. But more details on that one are probably needed. And to see it, it's best on dba.stackexchange.com. James asks, I ran SP Blitz first and I noticed high forwarded fetches per second. I'm seeing 36,000 forwarded records per second. How do I find out what table is causing this issue?
Run SP Blitz Index on your database is in mode 4, and you will see all the heaps you have, and the SP Blitz Index will tell you if you have a heap with many forwarded records in it. You can link that up to whatever is going on there. The other thing you could do is, I believe, if you run Blitz first with the plan cache switch turned on, you might get the query plan of what's running at the time. Also, Blitz Who, which runs at the beginning and end of Blitz first in expert mode, will give you what's currently running, and you might be able to see the query plan there. So in order,
Genius. Yeah.
Blitz Who, Blitz first with the plan cache on, and then Blitz Index was where I go.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, this is what happens when you spend a lot of time in GitHub. You learn what stuff does.
That's true.
I'd done that years ago.
And what stuff doesn't do.
Yeah. Bugs, side
Work.
effects. Oh, it's been a couple of weeks of fixing bugs, ladies and gentlemen, and introducing bugs. We introduced a few as well. Yeah.
It was nice to meet them.
Wes
It's
asked,
never nice to meet them, no.
oh, well, speaking of which, Wes has a feature request for you, Joris, for Paste the Plan.
Ooh.
He says he wants to be able to jump to the pain points, either high percentage of the query plan or high query bucks.
Wow, what would that be worth
That's
to you?
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Could we have like a swipe your credit card through and then it takes you to the right? I like that.
How many Bitcoins?
We actually don't have a place to submit feature requests, but if you hit contact at the top of the page, you can email us there, and we still won't code it, but at least we'll send you something nice in response. You know, we might actually code it. We could. Wes says it might actually be worth using Paste the Plan.
Oh,
Dang.
I'm going to see what the summit now. See, I wasn't going to go to the summit before, but now I'm going now, Wes. That's it.
Oh my goodness. Dang.
It's on. We're going Bobby style.
Well, now I don't know why I'm asking Wes this question, because he's got another one that's a real question and I should skip it, but it's only like 4 paragraphs long. Wes says, I have 2-socket 14-core VM hosts. I've freed up a couple SQL Server licenses that are already paid for. I want to throw those at our current VMs. Should I provision? Okay, so you asked like 5 things that are unrelated. So let's get to the meat of it. Should I provision the VM with 2 CPUs with 3 cores each, or 3 CPUs with 2 cores each?
Neither.
What in the hell? Yeah. So what would you do, Erik?
I would either go with 1 core with a bunch of it, or I would go with 2 cores with things split evenly.
Sockets, you mean sockets?
Right, sockets.
Yeah.
Sorry, sockets with cores split evenly. The odd number thing with CPUs and cores never seems to just work out.
Yeah. I would just go 2 by 2.
That's something that SP Blitz looks for now too.
Yeah.
If you have odd number of cores, which oddly enough has fired off on 2016 when they do the auto soft NUMA thing. It's fired because the DMVs show things as being weird, and like there's been one client with Tara and a couple with me now where I run it, and it's just like, you have 3 cores with how many? And then it's auto soft NUMA.
Wow, neato.
Yeah.
Ooh, and we'd be easy to set that up to repro it in the lab. I need to do that.
Yeah.
Wes says, is 6 cores no bueno? No, you could do 1 socket and 6 cores and you'd be fine. That works totally okay.
I would like that totally fine.
Yeah. Dawn says, good morning. I have a question about elastic databases in Azure. Are there any DBA tips that may be different than usual? Really, I'd step back. Azure SQL DB. There's things that you do differently in Azure SQL DB, period. Forget even elastic databases, but like you're not managing backups. You're not doing check DB. If you want to get your data out, things are a little bit more difficult. You can't use exactly the same DMV scripts. So like not everything works in Azure SQL DB as other databases. Performance monitoring is a tough one for me because if you have one chatty SQL Server or SQL database and the rest are dead, it's hard to manage that holistically across elastic pools. But that you're just relying on Microsoft Azure's portal there to do the management for you. Guillermo asks, holy moly, he's got 3 questions lined up. Guillermo, I'm going to ask the first one, then I'm going to switch around to someone else. Yeah, he's got lots of good. He's like copy pasting them in from all his coworkers, probably. They're ashamed to ask.
Guys, come here.
Yeah, check this out. People are actually answering. They don't know what they're talking about, but they're answering. Guillermo says, can included columns on an index slow down DML operations? Is there any reason that I shouldn't just, other than using more storage, should I just include all the fields?
He asked a similar question last week where I think he was trying to talk someone out of creating indexes that were like a few key columns, then including all of the rest of the columns in the table. And I think I answered that then. So, I mean, to I guess, expound on that point, yes, included columns can impact DML because you have to now keep the leaf level. With Richie, the leaf level is up top. With me, the leaf level is down the bottom. You have to now keep the leaf level of that index updated along with everything
Tree
else.
has leaves at the top.
Yeah.
Man.
But an index doesn't grow up. It's on a disk.
Don't look at my slides because it does have the leaves at the bottom.
Oh, no.
I like to draw mine sideways.
Oh, like a Visio org chart.
Yeah. This is your B tree. Everyone's like, what? Why is it round? It's like, because your disk is round.
Oh, God.
That's an SSD. And then it's a...
There's another idea for a blog post we should write. Salvador Dali draws your database diagram.
There we go.
Deborah
What
asked,
have Homer Simpson crying on it?
or Grandpa Simpson walking in.
He did actually say any other downsides besides using more storage. Wouldn't be using more memory be one of those as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
More space on disk, more space in memory.
That's right. Just got to pull it up and read it somehow.
Oh, stuff.
CheckDB takes longer, index rebuilds, stats updates, you name it. Deborah asks a question that I know all of us are going to fight over for the opportunity to answer. She says, we have stored procedures that are CLR. Should I continue reading, gentlemen? They work on the primary replica, but not the secondary. We get a .NET framework error. Supposedly the 2 nodes are identical. Do you have any hints about the things we should check?
Yeah.
Well,
that was mirroring. I don't know if it's true for AGs as well, where the first time you fail over, you have to enable trustworthy.
That's true. I don't think that's, I love where you're going. So explain that.
Well, so with mirroring, there was a bug where if you had CLR, the trustworthy attribute enabled on a database, the first time you failed it over, that wouldn't carry over with it. You would have to go enable it on the secondary. So you would have to enable CLR over there. I guess the other question would be if they're both the same version on both nodes.
I would go for the .NET version too. There's no reason that the .NET version is the same across all those. And you may be targeting a specific .NET version that is not on the secondary. I'm not good enough to know what the command is to check. I know there's a SQL Server command you can use to check the .NET framework installed version.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
There might be a DLL loader in the error log too that would tell you. That's wild speculation though.
Graham says, and of course I'm going to read this one real slow because it's excellent. I went to Brent's performance tuning class, which was awesome, by the way. I should probably repeat that. He says, just so everyone hears, I went to Brent's performance tuning class, which was awesome, by the way, and I got a job offer shortly after completing the class. Then I got a great counter offer to stay at my current jobs. So take Brent's classes and you should make more money. Results may vary.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll raise you one better than that. Richie took one of our classes before he came to work here, and we ended up hiring him. So
it was the very first one too.
Yeah.
It was your first in-person training classes.
Hotlanta. So have you ever put any of that stuff that you learned to use yet or no?
Yeah, of course.
I was joking.
Of course. Not here at Brent Ozar, no, but like elsewhere, yeah, absolutely.
The other jobs. Well, let's hit another one of Guillermo's excellent questions. Guillermo asks, how much do you guys use SQL command as well as the SQL command query mode? And what do you use?
Wow. Well, I mean, I always use that when I was messing around with AGs in the lab because it made it real easy to hop around and do stuff in there. That was always my primary use for it.
That's the only time I've ever used it. It's so useful for that to run queries back and forth between different replicas.
Yeah.
Excellent for that. Kendra used to use it for demos sometimes. She would use it just to have a query coming from somewhere else, just outside of Management Studio. Because Guillermo asked so many good questions, there's others in the queue, but I'll ask Guillermo's next one because it's so doggone good. How often have you guys used native database snapshots and for what purposes?
Rollbacks.
Oh, rollbacks for transactions?
No. So at a previous job, NDA, where there were like weekly software releases, we would take a database snapshot before a code release so that if we had to run anything back in a hurry, we could roll it back in a hurry or restore the database snapshot back over stuff.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Richie? You ever used database snapshots for anything?
Nope.
All right, there you go. I've also used them to get point in time reading for, like someone says, hey, I need a consistent point in time as of this morning, and snapshots have worked for that. Okay, so there's an extra check, I guess. We've all used it for CheckDB because that's how snapshots work behind the scenes, but that's kind of a cheating answer.
Technicality.
So yeah.
The snapshot of your mom.
It broke the mirror. Brian says, what can cause page life expectancy to plummet on a server with plenty of memory and seemingly static activity? Could it be a bad query that gets a large memory grant to clear the buffer pool? And this is one of,
one or two.
If you knew about that happening, where would you, or you suspected that of happening, where would you go look?
Well, I guess I'd have to go look in Blitz cache and sort by memory grant if I was on a newer version of SQL Server. If not, I would just turn on Resource Governor and cap everyone's memory to 0.
I like it 1 kilobyte.
Yeah, you get nothing.
Yeah. That SP Blitz Cache sort order memory grant requires 2012, 2014, or 2016, but you have to be on a current service pack or cumulative update. If you search brentozar.com for SP Blitz Cache and memory grant, you'll see the version where Erik introduced this, and it also has the versions of the exact service packs and cumulative updates that you need to be on.
And fun fact, you also have to restart after installing one of those. Otherwise, your version number will update, but you won't have that information in the DM. I found that out the really weird way on the phone with someone one day. I was like,
oh, wow.
But you're on the right version. They were like, but then like, the server up time was like way too long. And I was looking at it, I was like, did you reboot after you installed that patch? Like, no.
Wow.
I'm not coding that.
No. Wow. God, how you would even detect that.
I just check the DMV for the columns, I guess.
Yeah, that blows. Mark says,
Blitz cache? I don't think so.
Well, I knew at this point, those things are so big that anything you touch is terrifying. We go in there and we want to make changes. And Erik and I were on a performance tuning tear last week, 2 weeks ago. And we both just made rampant changes through SP Blitz Index. We did all kinds of changes all throughout, and dealing with the merge afterwards was horrible. My first thing was, all right, I just made this 3x to 20x faster, but I think it's going to be so full of bugs, it's not even funny. And it was.
Oh, no, it was funny to me.
It was very funny.
Finally, someone else's bugs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Doug was like, how did you do that? How'd you make it so much faster? And I'm like, well, I put all kinds of bugs in there. That works every time.
You skipped a bunch of stuff.
JH asks, does alter table statements lock the entire table all at once or in portions? Oh, I love how you're going with that. As if you like added a column, would it lock portions of the table as it rolled through the table?
Probably not. I would guess not, because after a certain number of locks, that's just going to try to go for an object lock, and I'm pretty sure alter table is one of those like no, I'll wait. I'm gonna wait and hang out and do that, unless you add it as a nullable column with no default value.
Yeah.
That should, then if you add it as a nullable column, you could do some stuff afterwards to update in chunks.
Yes, and that's what you should do anyway.
Blazing fast. There's like a name for that in development, and I never remember what it is. Like only make constructive changes or additive changes. Gradually never drop things out of your tables over time. Can't remember what the name is, but one of these days I'll remember. Let's see. Mark says, can you give me one good reason to use a GUID as a primary key instead of an identity column?
You'll never run out of them.
Ooh, okay. I like that. Also really good for when you're doing writes in 2 locations and you need to make sure that they never have any conflicts. With 2 locations, you could think about doing an identity field that one starts at 1 and goes up and the other one starts at -1 and goes down. And that's okay, but then it starts to fall apart as you start to add more replicas in, or like more multi-user bidirectional replication type stuff. You need to generate unique IDs on the client side for batches and then push stuff up into the database. If you want to piss off,
and that's how I would use it actually, as the client. Each client generates their own IDs and then it comes in to the database.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my only piece of advice there was, if you're going to use it as the primary key, I would use it as a non-clustered primary key rather than stick my clustered index around it and have to deal with all the GUID inserts all over the place.
Yep.
Guillermo says, here's another awesome question. Well, Guillermo, here's the deal. I see a theme with your question. You're going through books online and picking features and then saying, have you ever used this feature? I'm not telling you to stop. I'm just saying I see what you're doing there. Guillermo says, has a dedicated Amen connection, and I think he means not Amen as in the religious thing or Idi Amin, but the dedicated admin connection ever come in handy for you, and how? I feel so sorry for our transcriptionist who has to keep up with this stuff.
Right. It's great for thread pool demos.
What is thread pool?
Thread pool is a nasty wait that you run into when you run out of CPU worker threads to assign to queries, and they all just kind of stop and wait. You know, hanging on for a minute here. 15-minute union worker thread break. Everyone get your lunch bucket.
Yeah, it's good for that. I think that's the only time I've ever used it. I can't think of any other time where I've had to use it.
I know the book that Wes's VMware guy read.
So Wes, there's a follow-up here to Wes's CPU configuration thing, and there's a couple of problems with this follow-up here. He says, I just told my VMware admin to set it to 1 socket with 6 cores. He linked something and said that screws with vNUMA, and that VMware says to go wide and flat with 6 sockets with 1 core each. Do you have a rebuttal? That's totally okay. Although I would say if you're on standard edition is going to max out at 4 sockets. So that trick is only going to work if you run enterprise edition. I would also say whatever he just linked you to, make sure you read it carefully, read the whole thing, and use a highlighter to start calling out things that you know aren't right. For example, if the author says something about page life expectancy being measured in seconds, maybe that's something you want to just think about before you take the gospel truth out of that one.
I think you mean cost threshold for parallelism.
Oh, is that what I said? Yeah.
Page life expectancy, which is in seconds, but it has nothing to do with CPU cores, probably. Although that would make parallelism so weird.
Yeah, right.
It's like what?
Adam says, interesting. Our VTAM for VMware said the opposite. Yeah, it's funny. You can get a lot of interesting conflicting advice out there from folks.
I would try it both ways and see how it goes better. If it's SharePoint, who cares?
Yeah, that's true. Just give it 1 core and be done.
Yeah, right. That's all it needs anyway.
I would also say, we're joking a lot about it, and neither of those is going to screw you. As long as you don't mess up the licensing thing with standard edition, whether you go with 6 sockets, 1 core, or 1 socket with 6 cores, if that's your biggest problem, you're in pretty doggone good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Daisy asks, in production, I'm going to have to take a deep breath. Daisy, you're lucky. You have the only question left. Otherwise, I wouldn't go through all of these. So any of you who have questions in, feel free to get yours in.
Otherwise, I'm going to start taking clothes off.
Oh, God.
No, please answer a question. Ask a question. Get the question in, please.
Get those questions in.
Daisy says, in production, there are 2 SQL NUMA nodes online out of 4. To go through a long story, she has some gotchas with NUMA nodes being online and offline.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bigger problem here. If you have NUMA nodes that are offline, I also worry about you having memory offline. Go read run SP Blitz on your SQL server. Go read SP Blitz. Don't, whatever you do, don't read SP Blitz. Run SP Blitz on your SQL Server and read the output. One of them is going to warn you about CPU and memory being offline. The only reason I'm having you do that is go copy the URL out of there and go to that blog post. It talks about what happens when you have CPU offline or memory offline. MaxDop is the least of your problems. You were asking a question about MaxDop. You have much bigger problems than that. All right. Well, good news. Erik doesn't have to take any clothes off because more questions are coming in.
I look like a bear got attacked by a squid. Not pretty.
It took me a minute there to. Okay, so there's the next visual. We'll have our cartoonist go draw. Yes. Eric's going to be wrestling with a squid.
Like Bert Kirchner with
Dawn says, do you guys recommend storing binaries in the database like Excel files, PDFs, or should I store my files somewhere else?
No, es bueno. Store them somewhere else.
¿Por qué?
No es BLOBs in el database. No, Jeremiah has a great post, Jeremiah, from the blog Grave about keeping blobs out of the database and how it's much better to just store a pointer to where they live in the database and then let something else worry about storing them and opening them.
Yeah, I've made that mistake in my career where we put blobs in SQL Server and it's like, okay, so how am I supposed to read this outside? How is someone supposed to edit it and update it? Well, now we've got to, put it as a blob again and pull it out and transfer. And it's just, it's a hassle. It's a mess.
And have you ever seen a stored procedure that was made to edit a PDF?
Oh God.
It's worse than those old ones. You're like, I need to generate a barcode in T-SQL. How do I do that? You don't. Come on.
In fairness, I do also have to point out that Greg Lowe recently published a blog post on how you write line numbers in T-SQL.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Now we're going to see that on all my client servers.
Oh God, please.
Why is it slow?
Oh, no. Matt asks, he says he links to an article on SQL Server Central, and he says, do I need to configure a dedicated network for my availability group? Do I need a separate network for traffic throughput? Generally speaking, no. If you think about most modern servers have 10 gig Ethernet, and it's really hard for an availability group to saturate 10 gig Ethernet, even when it's sharing traffic with regular network type stuff. So I have not seen something that I really needed to do that on any SQL server. It's like Bigfoot. I've heard of people seeing it. I've just never actually seen it myself.
Well, that's why I turned on jumbo frames, and then everything worked.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, as soon as I increased packet size to 88 miles an hour.
Then we used large pages, and everything was fine.
Oh. Guillermo asks, what are the best ways to keep SQL Server settings across multiple SQL servers in sync? Like if you're using availability groups, database mirroring, how do you keep like SP configure stuff in sync?
Agent jobs that look for changes to agent jobs. Sync changes to agent jobs.
It's turtles all the way down.
It's awful.
Like Inception.
Like with all the stuff that Microsoft adds to these things, you would think that just a simple mechanism to keep stuff straight and lined up would be there. Man.
And I have this philosophy that you shouldn't, because a lot of times there are differences in the servers, like that I'm going to have different settings on a primary that's used for readable, for readable reports than I would think max memory, for example. Not all your servers are going to have the same max memory. So I would go hesitant on that.
Philip but there's some stuff that you want all on there and available in case something starts happening. Like users.
Yeah. Max worker threads.
That's coming. That as well. Turn that up to 50,000.
50,000. I got a talking to recently at a client too, by the way, who was like, and you know who it was. They pulled me aside and they're like, we set max worker threads. Erik said it's wrong, but you should tell him that it's fine for us. Okay. All right, cool.
Well, cool. I agree with them.
Yeah. You like them. They're nice people.
They are.
You like all our clients.
I do. They're so nice to me.
They're adorable. Yeah. Even though you look like a bear covered in squid ink.
I do. Even though I'm nude for all my calls. It's weird.
That's why we got in a high definition webcam, so everybody could pick out the exact tattoos there. because sometimes it's confusing which parts is a squid and which parts is the bear. But yeah,
Squid bear.
Kevin Bradley. I try not to ask last names, but this is good. It's a good question, so he shouldn't be ashamed. Because sometimes I don't want people's employers being read out or whatever. But Kevin says, training question: would you describe what's included in the subscriptions, especially the enterprise bundle? Yeah,
Loud,
the best way to do
colorful,
hand puppets.
happy.
Yeah. If you go to the site and click training at the top of the page, the easiest way to see it is on that training page. There's sections for what's in the DBA class, what's in the performance class. Just go to the top and click training. You can actually go click on each class and see all of the modules, how long they are before you go and subscribe. You can't watch previews of every module or anything like that, but it gets you a detailed step-by-step descriptions of what's inside of every other module. And then the last one we'll take, JH says, are you archiving these office hours videos to be so that we can watch them again afterwards? I don't know if you've answered my question, as I keep losing connection here and I have to reconnect back in. Good news. If you go to the top of our site and click blog, we actually not only can you watch them, but wait, there's more. You can read the transcripts. So you don't have to look at the bear covered in squid ink. You can just read the transcription afterwards and see exactly what we said about your question. And we did answer your question, JH, because you've been in a few times, and you I think you always ask good questions.
Very thoughtfully answered that question too. Now I'm sad. I'm depressed.
Right.
I'm gonna have to go to the gym and work on stuff.
On the bear and the squid, which is today a bear day or a squid day?
It's all bear days. All bear days.
Squid
day sounds like cardio. I don't want to do cardio. I'm lazy.
Yeah, you and me both. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us at this week's office hours, and we will see you guys next week. Adios.
Goodbye.